Hey everyone, it's Job. I hope you're doing well. Today I thought I would share with you my updated work bullet journal setup. It is that time of year, it's September and it's back to school, so I thought I would show you my teacher bullet journal setup. But obviously you don't have to be a teacher to be using the setup. It is minimal and simple enough to use for any type of profession or career, or even if you're a student. So I'm going to show you how I use this bullet journal. Obviously it's a little bit different because I'm using it in a traveler's notebook system, which is basically just a leather cover that has elastics that allow you to insert multiple notebooks, because I am using a modified bullet journal setup, but we'll talk about that once we get into it. So my main setup is going to take place in this beautiful Cosmo Air Light notebook from Danica 58. It's an Etsy store based in Japan, and Cosmo Air Light is a fantastic fountain pen friendly paper. I bought this in dot grid, and this is 192 pages, and I painstakingly hand numbered each page because I love notebooks that have, pagination, because I like to reference things in my index. So that's what I had to do first, and obviously you need to have a fountain pen test at the back to see how different inks test on this beautiful paper. Surprise, surprise, it's really nice. For the most part, I really enjoy color and like maximalism and like intricate designs and, fun, busy artwork. But for my bullet journal, I like to keep it simple because you can always add stuff and stickers and decorations. So the cover page is really simple. I just use a Pentel touch pen in this like blush brown, and it's really simple. Next up, we have the key or legend, which I think is a pretty important aspect to your bullet journaling system. Everyone has a different key or legend, and it's basically just the specific symbols that you use in your bullet journal to show progress with your tasks or your events. So here is my key. It's pretty simple. I show my tasks in two ways, but for the purpose of the key, I've only shown it one way, and my tasks are usually just bullets, or sometimes it's squares. It really depends on my mood. And then the following are, I guess, ways to show my progress with a task. So I have a half diagonal line, which means I've started a task, and then if I put another diagonal line on the same task in the opposite direction, it creates a square, which means I've completed a task. Some people like to put a check mark. I like to put an X because it's satisfying, but sometimes I change it up and I'll do a check mark. And then if it's an urgent task, I will put in an exclamation point in front of the task or the square. And then if it's an event, I don't do a task bullet at all. I just make sure it's a star, so I know that I have lunch with someone at 6 p.m. That doesn't make sense. That would be dinner. But you know what I mean. It's just like a little star to make something look a little bit more important. And then if I moved a task or event, I'll just put an arrow. And then if I canceled or deleted something, I won't white things out. I'll just cross it out, and it looks even more satisfying. I know some people like to keep their bullet journals clean and aesthetic looking, but for me, it's solely one of those productivity tools. So I don't care if there's like marks everywhere. For the most part, I try to keep it pretty clean and organized, but I don't mind the look of things being crossed out. And then obviously we got to add some decorations, so I use my Tombow marker in 992, which I think is a pretty popular color for a lot of bullet journalists who use a minimalist style. I picked this up because I wanted to try a more minimalist style, but I could see myself also using like a bright yellow for this little leaf decoration. So next up, we have the index, which is a fun way to also say table of contents. It's just a way for you to check back on, some of the key pages that you've made in your bullet journal. For me, this ends up being a hit or miss for me. In past bullet journals, I use this a lot, and in other journals, I haven't used them at all. But for a work bullet journal, this becomes quite handy because I take a lot of notes by hand as well. Or if I'm doing an observation, this comes in handy because I'll be, writing things down, and I'll just write down the page number on the left-hand side of the column. I realized that when I was writing and making these 3 pages for my index that it was way too zoomed in. So here are some B-roll shots of what it looks like. It's basically just one column that's smaller to write the page number, and then a larger column to write down the description of that page. So for example, right now on page 1 I have the key, and I'm just writing down, the different important spreads that I've made. It's a little bit meta because we're doing this like in real time. So right now the index is on page 2 to 4, and we're making the index right now. But I like to update this probably once a month. Sometimes I do it regularly, like if I know I'm gonna check back on a certain page, I'm gonna put in my index right away so I know that it's there, and then in the future if I need to look for that page, I just need to check the index, and then I have the page number that I need to go to. And that's why adding the page numbers was an important part of my process. I think the large appeal with bullet journaling is that it's very easy to customize the way you create and use trackers. I use trackers a lot in my day-to-day work life, but I use a lot of trackers that are on my computer because, marking things and keeping track of a lot of things. Sometimes it's just better to use like a digital software. Obviously I like to use both digital and analog tools, and I find that marking stuff is easier and keeping track of those things are easier on like a digital format. But for other tasks that are simpler to track, I think bullet journaling is a great way to keep track of that. I have 2 trackers here, one for if I stay past 3:30 at school, because we're all about work-life balance, and then the other tracker is if I order food to school, because I have been known to be the person that orders food for the staff. It's actually a bad reputation that I'm trying to shake, because I really should just be packing my lunch. But I have 2 trackers, and these are both yearly trackers, which I've never done before. This is my first time trying this out. But basically on the top row I have the months of the year. It's just symbolized by the first letter of the month, and then I have on the first column the days 1 to 31. Obviously there's not 31 days in each month, but this allows flexibility for each month. And then I just have very simple lines showing where I can check things off. And I think I grade out a few months in advance that do go all the way to the 31st day of that month, but I keep it pretty simple. And I don't know if I'm going to be effective in tracking both of these habits, but I do want to try. And if it doesn't work out, at least I have a very aesthetic looking tracker. I only used one strip of washi tape, and I put that at the bottom of the spread, and then I used a gray mild liner to show which months have 31 days in it. I think that's why I used the gray marker. If not, it was just there for design purposes. But moving forward, I will be using the gray marker to show when a month it has 31 days. Next up, we have example weekly spreads. This is a riff on the grid spacing spread or sheet that a lot of people like to add in their bullet journal to use as a reference when they create journal spreads. But for me, I always have trouble referencing or making weekly spreads. I feel like I'm always counting the boxes each time and trying to figure out some sort of possible dimension that works. And so I just took my own liberties with the grid spacing sheet or spread, and I've just created these 2 weekly layout templates that I can reference in the future. I know it might seem a little bit odd to just have empty weekly spreads just in your journal, but for me this saves so much time and effort, because I can just flip back to these pages and see like, oh, this spread is quite easy to make, because I know that I only need to count 5 boxes and draw a line here. And so I make it very clear here. I'm using just my multi-pen. This is a Uni Jetstream More Black. This is one of my favorite pens. It's actually a ballpoint. It's not a gel pen, but it's so smooth. It writes exactly like a gel pen. And I'm just using the black ink to create the the lines, the main lines in my spread, and then I'm going to go back in. You're probably going to see it in a little bit, but I'm going to go back in with the colored inserts, or the colored pen inserts like the red or the blue, to give me a little bit of hints as to how many spaces each line took. So as you can see, this is the quadrant layout, and I basically just split the first page, the left hand page, into 4 quadrants right in the center of the page, and then I split it both ways, horizontally and vertically. And then I did the same thing on the right hand side of the spread, but I didn't I only actually made 2 quadrants, and I just made the bottom one giant space instead of 2 separate quadrants, because I like to have a to-do and a note section. And you might be wondering, why are there only 5 days in my weekly spreads? It's because I don't like to put weekends, because I try to be a little bit better with my work-life balance, and I don't like to take work home. Sometimes it happens, but I can always write those tasks down in my notes or to-do section. But this gives me more space to write my week to-dos and notes, because I end up taking a lot of notes throughout the week, because I end up writing like reminders for myself, or different observations or things that I just need to remember for the week. And so those sections become more useful instead of having a Saturday and Sunday spread that I might not necessarily use. Right now, I'm just showing you what this spread looked like after I added all my notes. So when I flip back to this, I can see that the blue and red text actually gives me the number of squares I've counted to create this spread, and it's just so much handier. And I really urge everyone to make these spreads, because they might not look as pretty if you're flipping through your bullet journal, but it will save so much time and effort in the future. So I've shown you the example layout for the quadrant layout, and now I'm showing you the actual one that I created, for an upcoming week. And this time I actually made a mistake, but it's always good to show your mistakes. It shows that, everyone makes them, and it's totally fine to do so. But as you can see, my quadrant layout this time, I accidentally merged the bottom part of the spread into 2, or not merge, I actually split it into 2. It was supposed to be merged together to create one giant spread, but that's all right. I just have more quadrants, but that's fine, because I'll always use that space anyways. But as you can see, it's a pretty simple layout. I have Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and I use one accent color, the Tombow 992 marker, and then I'm making my subheadings for the 3 other quadrants. Usually there would just be one large space and one other quadrant left for to-dos and notes, but that's okay. I just have an extra space for more specific notes, and that's okay with me. But this is the completed layout. The next example layout that I'm creating is a weekly plus memo layout. This is roughly, taking inspiration from 2 different planner systems that I enjoy, the Hobonichi Weeks and the Travelers Company Weekly Plus Memo. That's hence the name Weekly Plus Memo for this portion of the video. But basically, on the left hand side of the spread, you're gonna have all the days of the week, and then on the right hand side of the spread, you just have straight up notes. And I have my own twist on it, because on my weekly spreads, like I mentioned earlier, I always like having the 5 days of the week instead of the 7. I just like having the work days. And then also I always have a note section and a to-do section. And so I actually, instead of having one large memo page on the right hand side of the spread, I have separated that into 2. So there is, the notes and the to-dos. And then on the left hand side of the spread, I have the dates on the leftmost edge, just like the Hobonichi Weeks. And for me, this is a layout that's really easy to replicate, and I am going in with my blue and red pen refills to add, all the important information for when I make this spread or this layout in the future. But this one was super simple. I think this one is my go-to for the most part. I've been playing around with the quadrant layout like I showed earlier, but when I am just too lazy to create a bullet journal spread, this is the one that I like to make, because it's pretty straightforward and I don't have to think too hard about how to create it. But yeah, let's move on to the next section. So the next layout is a timetable layout, and honestly this is something that might be very specific to students and teachers, but I think it's an important layout to have. I could also just use the layout that is sent to me by my school, but I like having a copy of it on my notebook just because I usually have this with me everywhere, and sometimes I don't have my computer or the things that are on my desk all the time. So this is a nice portable way to keep your schedule or timetable with you. My timetable is pretty simple. I have the 5 days of the week in columns, and then I have our regular structure of our school day. So we have 2 blocks in the morning, we have recess break, then we have 2 blocks after recess, then a lunch break, and then we have 2 blocks after that. And I basically just copy that, but I think now that I've been using this setup for about 2 weeks already, I realized that I should have made some blocks before school and after school, because I do have quite a bit of meetings before and after school, and that would be nice to have a place to write those meetings. Again, this is more of a reference than an actual usable timetable, because I have timetables that are something that I can access digitally, but it's nice to have this if I just need to check when the 3rd block ends. But I think for some people it's still nice to have a physical drawn out schedule or timetable in their notebook. Again, this is something that I'm not going to draw each week because the weekly layout suffices for me. It's more of a planning tool. This is kind of big picture planning, and I do a lot of this planning on a month basis because I try to keep my routine pretty similar for me and for the students that I support. So I like to keep this pretty, not rigid, but I like to set it in stone for a month, and then I'll revisit it again. So I don't make this spread too much. Luckily, it is just a simple table layout, and it doesn't require too much thinking. And again, I'm gonna use this as a reference. I didn't mark this up like I did in the weekly layout reference pages, but I can always flip back to this original timetable layout to see how I created this. The next layout is something that I'm showing for the purposes of this video, but it's something that I won't be working on moving forward, because this is the main reason why I'm using a traveler's notebook system, because I hate making monthly layouts. I love monthly planning. It's so great to see your month at a glance, but for me, making these monthly calendars is such a pain for me. I always end up messing it up, even if I have a reference page or an example layout of this monthly spread. It just doesn't work for me, and so I like having the flexibility of using a traveler's notebook system, because I can purchase a pre-made monthly calendar and just fill that in the future. So right now I'm showing you what an example of a layout that I could use, and it was not too bad to create, but it still took more mental gymnastics than I would really like. So right now I'm showing you the monthly calendar insert that I purchased from Traveler's Company, which is the same company that makes my Traveler's Notebook. This is a nice simple 12-month view of the year. There's a month for each spread on 2 pages. It's clear. You also get the months that are coming up on the right hand side of the page, on like the little edge of the page, and it's just a well done calendar. And sometimes we just gotta leave it to the experts. I know the spirit of bullet journaling is making your own layouts, but I think one of the flexibilities of using a traveler's notebook system is that you can use other resources at your disposal, because at the end of the day, this is a productivity tool, and I still feel more productive using a nicely made calendar than one that I have tried to recreate 5 times but have accidentally added the wrong day or month like 2 times in a row. So I feel like I've saved a lot of time just using this pre-made calendar. I know it might not be the most DIY approach, but again, there's always different alternatives. I've also seen people print out month calendars and glue that in, and that's something that I want to explore in the future. But right now, I like using the Traveler's Notebook system for its modular ability, and I'm gonna try and play to its strengths and just use what I have. So I'm using this monthly calendar insert. Okay, we are done setting up this bullet journal, and I'm just going to give you a quick flip through of all the completed pages that we made, while also giving you a quick summary to sum up everything that we worked on. So today we worked on creating a title page, a key, an index, also some tracking pages to track some habits. This is a year at a glance. We also worked on some lovely example spreads that I'm going to reference. I really recommend this. If there's one thing that you're going to take away from this video, it's this type of spread, because this will make your life easier. I think the large part of bullet journaling is actually getting comfortable with splitting up a page, and I think once you have examples for how to do that and spreads that you actually like, you might as well take the time to create an example spread so you can just reference that on the daily. I also made a schedule or timetable, and last but not least, an optional monthly calendar if you are going to keep your monthly spreads in one notebook. I hope you enjoyed seeing my bullet journal setup. I think bullet journaling is such a great and modular tool, especially as a teacher, because our needs change all the time. I have space to add daily pages if I need to, or I can just write notes on the next page, and I think that's what I love about bullet journaling. Let me know if you would like to see more bullet journaling content on Job's Journal. And lastly, are you using a bullet journal currently? And do you plan on using one in 2023? I would love to know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. And again, please be sure to check out my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Job's Journal to see some more exclusive content and fun videos and printables. I'll see you in the next video, everyone. Take care. I love you, and bye.